There's like this aspect of the angry Black woman. So when I get angry, I have to think about like, oh my God, are people gonna think I'm like that angry Black stereotypical women, you know?
I started to liken anger to a starter motor in a car. You turn on the key and there's a little motor, and when you flip the key, the little motor gets a spark and it starts turning the other motor, and then the engine goes. And if you run it for a long time, you hear it sort of grinds. You've ever done it where your car's on accidentally and you turn it and it grinds? That's what happens. To me, anger is like a spark. But if it stays beyond there, it's powerlessness. And welcome to this week's episode of the Interracial Couple,
where it's not all black and white. My name is Sarah, I'm Black.
I'm Matthew, I'm white. And good to have you this week as we dive into the anger issue.
Anger.
Sarah and I both completely transcended anger. We never get angry, particularly at each other. It's pretty amazing. So we're going to tell you how all of that works out for us.
Clearly, I was mad at you this morning, actually.
You were?
Yeah.
What were you mad at me about?
Because you didn't make the bed and you were the one last person in here.
How did that work out for you?
Yeah, I was just like, you know what? Just make the bed.
Oh. I think one of the things that's come up is over the course of not only our relationship, but we've been in relationships before each other, believe it or not. For me, that would have been the era otherwise known as BC, before Sarah. And also just in life, right? I mean, anger is, I think, just a part of life. But one of the questions that comes up as we continue to grow and evolve, particularly in our relationship, is to what extent is it important, and to what extent is it healthy, and to what extent does it actually give us something that can be an opportunity for growth or transformation?
Yeah, and also looking over the years, I think we've seen that we've processed anger differently through different stages of our lives. The way I process anger in my 30s or look at anger is not the same way I used to look at it in
Absolutely.
my 20s.
Yeah, right. I mean, and I think that one of the things for me is that, in a lot of the men's work I do, anger comes up frequently, in part because anger is kind of one of the primary allowable emotions for men to exhibit. There's a whole other range of emotions that is kind of, I don't want to say it's off limits, but that's also not completely untrue. There's a certain, cultural, men are stoic, we've got it together. And then when we don't, rather than showing our vulnerability, anger is just an easier way to go to because it's allowable. No one's going to, in general, that's okay. No one gets down on you for being angry. But if you're sad, if you cry, boys don't cry, but no one says boys don't get angry. That's totally fine.
Yeah. I also feel like for me as a woman and as a Black woman, there's this aspect of the angry Black woman. So when I get angry, it's I have to think about oh my God, especially in public, as people gonna think I'm that angry Black stereotypical women that people talk about, So I think how I deal with anger today is I either talk about it or let it go. I think those are my two things. And really my whole spiritual aspect of meditating helps in the way that I deal with anger. But I think even just talking about it with you, if something goes wrong, and just seeing am I really out of line? Do I need to be angry? Is my anger justifiable? I think kind of I can think about it for a couple of days. And I'm not really angry in my 30s. There are things that make me angry.
Me.
Yeah. But I would necessarily say that I would say I don't feel like I'm an angry person. And I think in my 20s, I used to be angry. I feel as we talked before, anger comes also lacking this power and feeling powerlessness. And I remember when I was I think I was 22, I would get angry about the most stupid, silly stuff. I remember this one instance where I was taking the equivalent, which is a matatu, the equivalent of a bus, public transportation. And the conductor of the bus was, in some ways, there was some altercation. He was rude. And I just remember pushing him so bad. And he just fell. And then I jumped out of a moving bus because I knew it was going to get ugly. And as I jumped, I just like remember jumping and then starting like running towards police, and like I just ran, and the police was like, what's wrong, what's wrong? And I was just like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And I just ran home. And then the next day I talked to my cousin about it, and my cousin was like, Sarah, if you don't transform the anger that you have, it's going to land you in jail. The way you're getting angry about small things, it's really problematic. She was just like, you are going to destroy your life if you're this angry. It's not worth it. And I just remember sitting there, I just was like, she's right. Like, I am so angry. And there was just like a lot of things like I was angry about. And since then, I was just like, I remember saying to myself, I am never going to let a bus conductor get to me.
So at the age of 22, you had already kind of given up, you were that aware of your anger and began your transformation with anger then?
I don't think I would say I was aware. I just knew if I didn't stop, I was not gonna end. And I lived in the ghetto, so I could see like how that would have led my life, taken my life in a direction that I didn't want. So I was very aware there were like small things that when you're poor and in the ghetto, you don't get away with, So, and I knew for me, if this continued, it would ruin my life. Like I was going to do something stupid around it. And so I just was like, I just decided I am not going to let this man and the harassment of it get to me. And I don't think I ever did again. I don't think I ever got angry at a stranger or a man for like saying something stupid.
Well, I've seen that to not be the case.
Okay.
I mean, even when we were back there, and like remember there was a drunkard like making a lot of totally inappropriate comments.
And I just went off on him.
You went off on him.
Yeah. I'm not saying it transformed, but I feel like I'm more aware. And also like maybe I moved away, so it's not on my everyday life. So I'm not sure like what happened. But yeah, I did. I remember that. And I just was like years where I just wouldn't. I'm not saying like I got to be Buddha around it. I'm just saying I got to be more aware that I was a really angry young adult.
Yeah. And my experience with anger was quite a bit different because I didn't, when I look at my anger and where my anger comes out, it's probably similar to you because if you look at it, ultimately what would have made that come out would have been injustice, right? Like that's just to be harassed. There's a, your safety is at risk. Why should my safety be at risk? Or if I feel like my safety is at risk because these kind of men can kind of have free range and say whatever they want or whatever. So I in that sense, I think it certainly relates. Like I still see it with myself. I get angry. There are times where I have a hard time sleeping. I read something in the newspaper or whatever, and it keeps me angry. And when I go back and kind of see how that's played out in my life, like where has anger had a big impact in my life, besides sometimes keeping me awake when I think of something somebody did or something's happening in the world. But it was actually also in relationships. Like I'm a pretty even-keeled person. But anger, like when would I finally break, And one of the things I think, because I'm pretty easygoing, I can just kind of like, I'll let things go. Like, oh, I'll let it go. But ultimately, I'm not really dealing with whatever the issue is. And so then it kind of, I've seen it sort of build up within, then I will explode, right? And at that point, at some point, certainly like in my, my major past relationship, that like the times when I was angry, so much of the time was like pointing at the other person, like you're making me angry, you're doing this. And at a certain point, it was like, wait a second, no one can make me angry. So what's causing my anger? And one of the big things for me is that at the moment when I got angry, I'd given away too much of my power. Like I hadn't preserved my space. Something that was important to me, I didn't speak it. I didn't sort of stand up for myself. And therefore I let that become something that would then make me feel angry and I can't do anything about it,
Yeah.
And in some ways it's controversial. And once again, going back into men's work, you know, there's a lot of men who can look and say, you know, anger is really good at, it's the thing that like fires something up at me to help me protect my wife and my children, for example, you know? And I was like, well, yeah, but at the point where you have to get angry, you're actually in a lower position of power. Like the emperor doesn't need to be angry, because the emperor will simply say, like, do away with that problem and it's done away with. They don't need to waste their anger or their energy on anger. You know, and each time I looked at that in my own life, the times when I got angry is when I felt like I don't have any power in this situation.
Yeah, I think it's actually like, I think you're like spot on. Is like, even when I get to today, is like one of the things like I'm realizing I'm very angry about, like the wealth gap, you know, and I've become very passionate about it just because of the work that I do, the business that I run, running a social enterprise. It's like I'm just very aware, and it makes me angry. Like I've noticed, like every time I talk about the wealth gap, is like I'm angry, and I think the anger comes from like I am pushing to bridge that wealth gap, but I don't feel like I have enough power, or like I'm in control, and I don't even feel like I'm doing anything to close that gap. And so there's like this place of like where some days I feel like I'm driven and I love what I'm doing. And some days I'm just like, what am I even doing? You know, like, is my work even having an impact?
Right.
And then I'm angry, you know, because I put so much effort. I put 2 years of my life into this business. And then at the end of the day, I'm just like, the wealth gap between, you know, the rich and the poor, and like,
And, you know, black and
white
white.
is just so huge that I'm just like, am I even what am I doing?
Right. Didn't you say blacks in America own 0.4% of the wealth?
Of the wealth. And I'm reading this book right now about the wealth gap, and it just makes me like, I feel like I go through this like waves of like anger, because I'm just realizing like what I'm doing is like nothing, you know.
And I think there was that bumper sticker that in the 90s everybody had that said, you know, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. And in this kind of realization for me was that, wait a second, if you're still outraged, it means you're not doing anything about it. And sometimes you can't, you know, there are certain limits. But I think of someone like Eva Ensler, and who wrote the Vagina Monologues, and is really one of my heroes. And here's someone who's, you know, dealt with her own sexual abuse, and who then dedicated her life to helping women who've been raped, sexually abused in really any way. And I've like read the Vagina Monologues. I've read her work. I see what's happening in the world. You read about, you know, revenge porn in America. You read about sort of, you know, rape as a war tactic. And I get so angry about it. Like it just like visceral anger. And then I look at someone like Eva Ensler, who can write about it, and I don't want to say dispassionately, but so centered. I'm like, how can you not be like overcome with either anger or sorrow or everything when you do the work that she does? But I actually believe that she can do that and not be completely consumed by anger or sadness, because she's actually doing something about it. She actually has agency.
Yeah. I think when you do something about something that angers you, then the anger almost like disappears. Maybe not so much, but you don't feel as angry. You know?
I started to like liken anger to a starter motor in a car. You know, you turn on the key and there's a little motor, and when you flip the key, the little motor gets a spark, and it starts turning the other motor, and then the engine goes. And if you run it for a long time, you hear it sort of grinds. You've ever done it where your car's on accidentally and you turn it and it grinds? That's what happens. To me, anger is like a spark. But if it stays beyond there, it's powerlessness. And I can speak to that in relationship. You know, when I get, one of the things that I saw is, if I'm going to be angry at you, it's like, usually it's because I want something and you want something different. And if that's the case, the powerlessness would be, oftentimes as myself, is that I am going to, maybe if I let you win, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to say, you know what, fine, we'll just do it your way. Now I'm actually angry because I've given away my power. I haven't chosen to do like whatever it is the way you want to do it. Instead, I am relenting. I am giving up. I am giving up my power. And then I get angry. And I think one of the things for me that has really helped our relationship and me in the relationship is that in general, if I'm going to do something that is, you say you want to do A and I want to do B, if I'm going to end up doing A, 99% of the time, I actually just choose to do A and say, you know what, that's my choice. And therefore, like we talked about this before too, when we moved back to Kenya, it's like when we moved to Kenya, you were worried when problems started coming up, if the shit hit the fan, we had these issues, you're like, oh my God, this was my idea. But it wasn't your idea anymore because I chose it. I had a different plan for that year before you and I became serious, and I gave up that. But I didn't give it up. Instead, what I did was I chose this other thing to do with you. So therefore, the whole thing could have completely come tumbling down, and I wouldn't have had any bitterness about it at all because it was my choice.
Because you made a choice about
Right.
it.